Welcome back to the Explanation Pro. Today I'll recap a biography, drama film called Changeling. Spoilers incoming. The movie begins in 1928, where Christine Collins, a dedicated single mother, raises her son, Walter, at a standalone house in Los Angeles. Every day, she wakes up in the morning to prepare breakfast for her son and measure his height. Soon after, Christine accompanies Walter to school and heads to her workplace at a telegram company. In the afternoon, Christine fetches her son from school and goes home, where he takes a short nap. They then decide to go to the movies together tomorrow, and she recommends watching Charlie Chaplin and the Mysterious Airman. The following day, Christine receives a call from her workplace asking for her assistance. Christine agrees to help and reminds Walter to take care of the house and that she will be back before dark. Walter is sad, but she promises to go to the movies the next day. Later that day, Christine arrives late at home. She calls out for Walter, but he doesn't respond. She checks the whole house, yet she can't find him. She then searches around the neighborhood to look for him, but unfortunately, no one saw him. At night, Christine calls the police to report a missing child. However, the officer tells her that she cannot file a report for the missing child within 24 hours. Having no choice, Christine waits for the night to end as she bitterly cries for her son. 2 weeks have passed since Walter's disappearance. Reverend Gustav Briegleb, a pastor at St. Paul's Presbyterian, publicizes the case and exposes the inefficiency and corruption of the Los Angeles Police Department under the authority of Chief James E. Davis. 3 months later, Christine keeps herself busy at work when she suddenly sees Ben talking to 3 officers looking for her. One of the officers introduces himself as Captain J.J. Jones. He tells her Walter is alive and was picked up by local police from DeKalb, Illinois. Christine happily receives the news of her son and thanks the police. The next day, Jones assists Christine to reunite with her son. They arrive at the train station where reporters flood the area inquiring about their much-awaited reunion. The police chief greets Christine and positively takes her story as a way to uplift the reputation of the police. Before the chief could finish, she rushes to the train to meet his son. From afar, she spots a young child who resembles Walter, but she claims the child is not her son. Jones defends the child as Walter, who might have changed and lost weight, which explains his change of appearance. He also asks the boy questions which confirm him as Walter Collins. However, Christine insists that he is not her son. Despite her reluctance, Jones pressures her into taking the boy home on a trial basis to help her see that he is indeed her son. After that, the reporters interview them, but the police speak for her and continue to praise the efforts of the police to reunite them. The mother and child awkwardly pose a picture together for the headlines. Later that day, Christine takes the boy to her house and tells him to take a bath. He slips into the bathtub and she sees that he's circumcised. She then measures his height and discovers he's shorter than Walter. Convinced that he's not her son, she asks for the boy's real name, but he doesn't respond. The next day, Christine confronts Jones that the boy is not her son. Even when she explains the prominent differences between the boy and Walter, Jones still doesn't buy it. He provokes her, insisting that she's just running away from her responsibility as a mother, but she retaliates that what concerns her the most is that they have stopped looking for her son. After a heated argument, she apologizes to him and begs for his help to find her son. He is moved by her apology, thus he requests the aid of Dr. Tarr to help her. Later that day, Dr. Tarr visits the Collins home to examine the boy. He explains that Walter's spine shrunk due to trauma and the possibility that the boy's abductor circumcised him. After the consultation, he reassures her that the boy's severe physical changes are due to the stress he endured during his 5-month captivity. Soon after, Christine calls Jones and complains that the so-called doctor treats her as a delusional mother. She then points out he is wasting his time when he should be looking for her son. Despite her persistence, Jones still insists the report is final, thus, Christine requests to receive the report so that she can refute it. Jones accepts and ends the call. The boy then leaves the room and calls her mommy. Out of frustration, Christine lashes out at the boy and tells him that he's not her son. In the morning, Christine wakes up from a phone call from Pastor Gustav Briegleb, a pastor at St. Paul's Presbyterian. He invites her over to discuss the news article condemning her as an irresponsible mother. The statements came from Dr. Tarr and were implanted by the police to discredit her to cover their mistake. He then explains to Christine that the LAPD would do anything to avoid admitting it. He also wants to help her to expose the corruption of the police, but she makes it clear that all she wants is to bring Walter home. After that, Christine takes the boy to Walter's dentist and he confirms that the boy does not have the dental issues that Walter has. The dentist then agrees to officially write the report supporting her claim. At school, Walter's teacher agrees to testify as well to prove her claim. Meanwhile, when Brie Gleb drops her off, a swarm of reporters bombards her with questions where Christine firmly declares that her son is still missing to this day and reveals that the boy is not her son. As she publicizes her claim against the false efforts of the LAPD, a policeman sees her and reports it to Jones. Because of this, he summons her to the police station. Meanwhile, a complaint is filed from the Canadian Mounties, stating about a minor residing in a Wineville ranch. Lester Ibarra, a detective, accepts the job and starts the investigation. Upon arriving at the station, Jones confronts her act of publicizing her case, which he takes as a way for her to embarrass them. He even tries to manipulate her, claiming that she's a liar and a troublemaker. Suddenly, he orders the matron to take her to the hospital's psychopathic ward with reports diagnosing her nature of condition as one who suffers paranoia, delusions of persecution and dislocation from reality. Once she is admitted to the psychopathic ward, she is immediately treated as if she is mentally unwell and undergoes extreme physical examination. She is then assigned to share a room with a madwoman. Her helpless pleas are ignored by the authorities and insist that she meets the doctor the next day. Meanwhile, Ibarra arrives at the residence of Northcott Ranch in Wineville. He inspects a chicken coop close to the house and spots a kid. He approaches him, but he runs towards the house and locks it. He tries to open the door and informs the people inside that he's a cop. With no response, he is forced to kick the door open and moves cautiously inside. Suddenly, the kid ambushes him from behind, but Ibarra overpowers him, leading to his arrest, and is eventually taken to a local police station. Later that night, a man named Gordon Northcott is searching for a train to Canada, but no trains were available at the time, thus he takes a trip to Seattle instead. The next morning, Christine goes to the dining hall for breakfast. She then meets a patient named Carol Dexter, who is in a similar situation as her. She was also admitted to the ward because of a police report. She explains that those who are challenging the authorities end up in the ward, which prevents them from speaking up against the police. Later that day at the police station, the kid introduces himself as Stanford Clark, a teenager living with his cousin, Northcott. The officer then tells him that he will be deported back to Canada the next day. However, Clark requests to meet Ibarra to speak with him about an important matter. Meanwhile, at the psychopathic ward, Dr. Steele calls Christine in. He asked her some questions and mentions the case of her missing son. He even shows a picture of her with the presumed Walter taken at the day they were reunited. Dr. Steele claims that the boy was Walter that day and the next day he is not, leaving her more confused. He tries to convince her to believe that the police sent her to the ward for her protection, but because she insists that the police did it to punish her, he diagnoses her as a delusional mother. Back at the police station, Clark reveals the horrible crime of Northcott and admits in being his accomplice. They have kidnapped 20 kids and are held captive at the ranch. He also exposes Northcott's kidnapping method by deceiving the children that something happened to their parents, then he lures them to his vehicle and takes them to the ranch to kill them. To determine whether these murders are related to Walter, Ibarra shows him pictures of missing children where he identifies Walter. Ibarra immediately calls Jones and tells him about Clark's story and its connection to Walter's disappearance. However, Jones is unconvinced and claims that Clark is lying. He is suddenly interrupted by Brie Gleb, along with a mob, asking about Christine's whereabouts. He immediately orders Ibarra to take Clark to the station to prepare him for deportation. He then deals with Brie Gleb and a few journalists, informing them that Christine is held in protective custody by the police, following a mental breakdown. Later that day at the ward, the nurse tells Christine that she will be taking mood-regulating pills. She resists and ran to the doctor's room, saying there is nothing wrong with her. Dr. Steele agrees to let her go if she signs a paper indicating the boy returned to her by the police is her son. But Christine refuses to sign the paper, thus she is forced to take medication. Carol tries to help Christine, but she is stopped by Dr. Steele and insists it's a police business. She can't help but be baffled at his words, thus she punches him, but soon faces the consequence of shock therapy. Christine then visits Carol and tells her that she shouldn't do that to the doctor. However, Carol still wants to do it because it allows her to fight back. She then encourages her not to give up on what she believes in. Soon after, the nurse orders Christine to leave the room. Back at the police station, Ibarra decides to take Clark for questioning. He then heads to the ranch to see if Clark was telling the truth. Upon arriving there, Ibarra instructs Clark to lead them to the burial site of the victims. Eventually, they find the remains and clothes of children, which he confirms as evidence of the crime, thus lists Gordon as wanted. He also assures Clark that everything will be taken care of, thus Clark begins to cry. 6 days later, at the ward, the doctor insists Christine sign the paper if she agrees with the condition. Christine foul-mouthed the doctor and sent her for therapy shock. At the same time, Reverend Briegleb arrives at the ward and demands to see the doctor in charge. Dr. Steele goes to see the commotion and Briegleb hands out the current newspaper, telling him to read it. As the therapy shock is about to begin, the nurse barges in to stop them. Dr. Steele tells Christine one last time if she is willing to sign the paper. Christine firmly opposes it, but still, he releases her. Leaving her confused, she takes her belongings and leaves the ward. Later, Christine is walking on the streets of Los Angeles and hears the news of children murdered in Wineville. Because of this, she assumes that Walter is dead. The news makes her faint and Briegleb arrives just in time to help her. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, Ibarra questions Walter's imposter. He reveals that his motive was to secure his transportation to Los Angeles to see his favorite actor, Tom Mix. The police also told him to lie about being Christine's son. On that same day, in Vancouver, Canada, Northcott visits her sister and requests to stay with her for a few days. When he heads upstairs for a bath, his sister's husband calls the police and reports him and is immediately arrested. Later that day, Briegleb introduces Christine and her case to a renowned lawyer, Sammy S.S. Hahn, who accepts the case pro bono and swiftly obtains a court order for the release of other wrongfully detained women who the police wanted to silence. On the day of the council's hearing of the case, Christine, Hahn, and Briegleb arrive at Los Angeles City Hall, where thousands of protesters denounce the LAPD. After that, Northcott arrives at the court and the trial begins. At the trial, Jones firmly denies all accusations thrown at him regarding Walter's case, but Hahn cleverly exposes him for sending Christine to the psychopathic ward without a warrant. After that, multiple accounts testify to the connection of Walter's disappearance to Northcott's murder case. A week later, the council decides to relieve Jones and Davis of their duties and finds Northcott guilty of murder, thus, he is sentenced to death by hanging. 2 years later, Hahn visits Christine and receives a message from Northcott, saying he is willing to confess to killing Walter in exchange for a meeting with Christine. She then visits Northcott, but he refuses to tell her whether or not he killed Walter. Christine lashes out and asks for answers, but Northcott calls the guards to escort him out. The next day, Northcott is executed by hanging. After justice was served, Christine is promoted as an assistant manager. She then receives a phone call from Mrs. Clay, who also has a missing child, and informs her that the police found a boy at California, who was presumed dead. Christine rushes to the police station and sees Mr. and Mrs. Clay. However, the boy was not Walter but David Clay. They then watch Ibarra and David in the interrogation room, exchanging information on what happened at the ranch. He said that he and Walter were among the kidnapped children and he managed to escape with his help. However, he doesn't know if Walter made it out alive. He is then reunited with his family, which gives Christine hope that someday she will find Walter too. And with that small hope, she never stopped searching for her son. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and also subscribe my channel for more videos like this. See you in the next video.